In the heart of Ijele Village, where the sun kissed the earth with golden warmth and the rivers hummed ancient songs, lived a woman like no other. Zanira was her name, and her beauty was the kind that made men forget themselves. Her skin was as smooth as river-polished stones, her eyes held the mystery of the night sky, and her laughter was like the sound of wind chimes swaying in the evening breeze. Men whispered about her, women envied her, and the elders watched her with knowing eyes, for they believed that such beauty was both a gift and a curse. But Zanira had a rule. No man could touch her before marriage. It was a law she had set for herself, and she never wavered. Some men admired her for it, calling her a woman of virtue. Others were frustrated, thinking she played a cruel game. Yet only Zanira knew the truth. This was not about dignity. This was about survival. For if any man ever laid eyes upon what she hid between her thighs, he would never be the same again. The arrival of Adairo. One day, a warrior named Adairo arrived in Ijele Village. He was not just any man, he was a legend. Tall, broad-shouldered, and with a heart as fierce as a lion's, Adairo had fought many battles and won them all. He had seen many beautiful women in his travels, but none like Zanira. From the moment he laid eyes on her, he knew she was the woman he would marry. But Adairo was not like the others. He did not shower her with gold or empty words. He did not try to break her rule. Instead, he watched her, admired her not just for her beauty, but for her wisdom. One evening, under the great baobab tree, he spoke. "Zanira, I have fought many battles, but none as difficult as this. My heart is at war, for it belongs to you." Zanira felt something stir inside her, a feeling she had long ignored. Adairo did not chase her with riches, nor did he try to bend her to his will. He simply offered her his love. For months, they courted, and for the first time, Zanira let herself dream. And then, one fateful day, Adairo knelt before her, holding a ring carved from sacred wood. "Marry me, Zanira. Be my wife." Her heart pounded. Fear crept into her bones. She wanted to say no, to protect him, to protect herself. But her heart betrayed her lips. "Yes," she whispered. The village erupted in celebration. Drums echoed across the land, the elders poured wine in blessing, and women danced with joy. But deep inside, Zanira was afraid. Because she knew what was coming. The wedding night. The celebration lasted till the stars filled the sky, but as the night deepened, Zanira sat alone in her new home, her hands trembling. She had dreamed of love, but love had never been meant for her. When Adairo entered the room, his face was full of happiness, his eyes burning with love. "My wife," he whispered, stepping forward. But Zanira stepped back. "Adairo, maybe we should rest first. The day has been long." He chuckled, reaching for her hand. "I have waited for this night, my love. Do not be afraid." Tears pricked her eyes. There was no escape. Slowly, hesitantly, she removed her clothes. Adairo's smile vanished. His eyes widened. His lips parted in a silent gasp. And then, he screamed. "Oh! My eyes! My eyes!" His body staggered back as if struck by lightning, his hands clutching his face. In an instant, darkness swallowed him whole. He stumbled to the ground, his screams piercing the silence of the night. The villagers heard him. They came running. Elders, women, children, all gathered outside the house, their faces filled with confusion and fear. What happened? What is wrong with him? Adairo lay on the floor, shaking, his once bright eyes now blank and lifeless. And in the doorway stood Zanira, her heart breaking, knowing that once again, love had turned to horror. And this was only the beginning. The sun had not yet risen when the whispers began. The once joyous village of Ijele was now drowning in fear. Adairo, the mighty warrior, the man who had stood undefeated in battle, was now blind. What happened? Did she poison him? No, she did nothing, he simply screamed and fell. The elders of the village gathered. Their faces were grave, their voices low. They summoned Zanira. She stood before them, her face calm, but her heart was a storm of emotions. Tell us, child, the chief elder said, his aged eyes studying her, what did you do to your husband? Zanira lifted her chin. I did nothing. The crowd murmured, but no one dared to say the words they were all thinking. She is cursed. They had no proof, no explanation, just fear. Days passed, and Adairo did not regain his sight. Despite everything, he did not blame Zanira. It is the gods, he whispered one evening as she fed him warm soup, not you, my love. His words were kind, but Zanira knew the truth. She was the reason he was blind. And this was not over yet. The arrival of Izomo. Months passed, and though Adairo remained in the village, his blindness left him dependent on others. Zanira withdrew from the world, hoping that if she stayed away from men, the curse would slip. But fate had other plans. One evening, a merchant arrived in Ijele Village. His name was Izomo, a man of great wealth and ambition. He had traveled from distant lands, and when he heard whispers of a woman so beautiful that men lost their senses, he laughed. Blindness. That is the talk of fools, Izomo boasted. A woman's beauty cannot harm a man. And so, he sought Zanira. Unlike Adairo, Izomo was not patient. He came with gifts, gold, fine clothes, and horses. He spoke sweet words, but they carried no true affection. The elders, eager to erase Zanira's dark past, encouraged the union. If she marries again and nothing happens, then all will know she is innocent. Zanira hesitated. But she had no choice. The village expected her to prove that she was not cursed. And so, once again, she was given to a man. The second wedding night. The feast was grand, even larger than before. Music filled the air, drums thundered, and the village danced in celebration. Izomo held Zanira's hand with pride, whispering in her ear. You are mine now. And tonight, you will belong to me completely. Zanira's heart pounded. She had prayed, begged the gods for mercy. Please, let this time be different. But the gods did not answer. When the night fell, Zanira sat in her new home once again, trembling. Izomo entered, smiling. My love, the world speaks of your beauty. Tonight, I shall see if the rumors are true. Her hands were cold, her legs weak. Izomo, please, maybe we should wait. He laughed. I am not afraid. And then, as he undressed her, his smile froze. His eyes widened in shock. He opened his mouth to scream. But no sound came out. He gasped, clutching his throat, his face twisting in horror. He tried again. Nothing. His hands flew to his ears, his body trembling. The world around him had gone silent. Izomo could no longer speak. Izomo could no longer hear. The village awakens once more. Outside, the villagers heard the commotion. They rushed to the house, their torches burning bright in the darkness. When they saw Izomo flailing, screaming without a voice, their fear turned to terror. Not again. This is not natural. First Adairo's sight, now Izomo's voice and hearing, what is she hiding? The elders were called again. Once more, Zanira stood before them. But this time, the whispers were louder. The people had feared her before. Now, they were convinced. She is not just cursed. She is dangerous. The curse grows stronger. Izomo, once a proud and powerful man, was now silent forever. Adairo, the fearless warrior, remained blind. And Zanira. She was still untouched by harm. It made no sense. No sickness had touched her. No misfortune had come to her. But the men who tried to claim her suffered. The village did not know what to do. They could not punish her. They could not prove she had done anything. But they watched her now. They feared her. And Zanira knew the curse was not finished. Because somewhere out there, another man would come for her. And when he did, the curse would awaken once more. By now, Zanira was feared. No longer did the villagers whisper behind her back, they spoke openly, their voices laced with fear and suspicion. She is cursed. 2 men have suffered because of her. How many more will fall? Women pulled their children away from her when she walked through the marketplace. The elders avoided her gaze. Yet, despite the rumors, there was one man who was not afraid. His name was Obadil. The wealthiest and most powerful man in the region. Obadil, a man who feared nothing. Unlike the others, Obadil did not believe in curses. He was a man of gold, a man of power, a man who ruled over villages. And when he heard of Zanira, he laughed. Foolish men, he said, shaking his head. Their weakness blinded them, not this woman. Obadil believed in control. In his mind, no woman had power over him. He had taken many wives before, all of them obedient, all of them bowing to his will. The gods favor me, he told his men. I will make Zanira my wife. And when I do, the world will know that no curse can touch me. The courtship of a king. Unlike the men before him, Obadil did not woo Zanira with words or simple gifts. He built her a palace. He sent servants to wait on her hand and foot. He ordered silk from foreign lands, jewels that sparkled like the sun, and gold heavier than a warrior's spear. The elders, desperate to cleanse the village of the stain of Zanira's past, supported the union. If she marries him and nothing happens, we can finally put this behind us. Zanira wanted to run. But where could she go? The village had already turned against her. And if she refused Obadil, she knew what would happen. He would take her anyway. So, for the 3rd time, she prepared to become a wife. The grandest wedding. The wedding was unlike any other. Dancers performed until their feet bled. Drummers played until their hands ached. Palm wine flowed like a river, and the entire kingdom came to witness. Even the king himself sent a blessing. But as the night fell, and the last song was sung, Zanira knew what awaited her. The night of no return. Zanira sat in the largest room she had ever seen. Silken sheets covered the massive bed. Candles flickered along the walls, casting long shadows that danced like spirits. She took a deep breath. This time, please, let it be different. But she already knew the answer. The door creaked open, and Obadil stepped inside. He was smiling, full of confidence, as he removed his royal robes. Tonight, you are mine. Zanira's hands trembled. Obadil, please, maybe we should wait. He laughed, shaking his head. I am no fool, my love. I am no weak man. I have waited long enough. She closed her eyes. There was no escape. Slowly, hesitantly, she removed her clothes. Obadil's smile disappeared. His face twisted. His eyes widened. His breathing became ragged. He staggered back, grabbing at his chest. Then, he let out a terrible scream. A scream so loud it shattered the silence of the night. His body convulsed. His hands clawed at his throat. His mouth opened, blood trickled from his lips. His legs buckled. And then, he collapsed. Lifeless. The village awakens in terror. The palace erupted in chaos. Servants rushed in. Warriors stormed the room. And there, in the middle of the chamber, Zanira stood over the lifeless body of Obodio. The villagers gathered outside. When they heard the news, fear turned to fury. She has killed him. She is not just cursed, she is evil. We must get rid of her. The elders called for a meeting. The people no longer whispered, they shouted. And this time, they had made their decision. Zanira would not stay in Ijele Village. She would not bring her curse upon another man. She would not be allowed to ruin another life. She must be banished. That night, Zanira was cast out of the only home she had ever known. She had no food, no family, no place to go. As she walked into the dark, endless forest, she whispered to herself, I did not choose this curse. But now, I will find the truth. Because Zanira knew one thing. If she did not uncover the secret of her own existence, this curse would never end. And fate was not done with her yet. Zanira walked alone. The forest stretched before her, dark and endless, swallowing her whole. Behind her, the village gates had slammed shut. The place where she was born, where she laughed as a child, where she dreamed of love, was no longer her home. She had lost everything. The whispers of the wind carried the voices of the villagers. She is cursed. She brings ruin to every man she touches. She should never return. But Zanira did not cry. She did not scream. She simply walked. The forest of no return. For days, she wandered through the thick trees. She drank from small streams, ate bitter berries that made her stomach ache. She had nothing, no food, no shelter, no hope. And yet, she kept walking. She did not know where she was going. But something inside her pushed her forward. Then, on the fifth night, she saw it. A small mud hut, hidden between two giant trees. Smoke curled from the thatched roof, carrying the scent of burning herbs. And sitting outside, on a wooden stool, was an old woman. Her silver hair hung in thin braids, her eyes sharp as a hawk's. She held a wooden staff, covered in strange carvings. Zanira's body weakened at the sight. She staggered forward, her lips cracked, her voice barely a whisper. Please, help me. The old woman turned her head slowly. For a long moment, she simply stared. Then, in a deep, knowing voice, she said, I have been waiting for you, child. The healer of secrets. The old woman's name was Mama Ejoka, a healer who lived deep in the forbidden forest. She led Zanira inside, where a small fire burned, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Dried herbs hung from the ceiling, and the air smelled of ancient secrets. She handed Zanira a bowl of warm soup. Eat. You will need your strength. Zanira drank hungrily, the warmth spreading through her frozen body. And when she finished, Mama Ejoka spoke. Tell me your story. So Zanira told her everything. She spoke of Adairo's blindness. She spoke of Izomo's silence. She spoke of Obodio's death. She spoke of the fear in the villagers' eyes, the way they looked at her as if she was a monster. And finally, she spoke of what happened on her wedding night. She could not describe it, the thing between her thighs, the thing that made men tremble in terror. But Mama Ejoka did not flinch. She only listened. And when Zanira finally fell silent, the old woman nodded slowly. Then, she reached for a wooden bowl filled with black powder. This, she whispered, is the answer. Zanira's breath caught in her throat. What do you mean? Mama Ejoka's eyes darkened. This powder carries a curse. And I have seen it before. The curse before she was born. Mama Ejoka placed her hands on Zanira's forehead. She closed her eyes and began to chant in an ancient tongue. The fire in the hut flickered. The air grew cold. And suddenly, Zanira saw it. A vision, blurred at first, but then clear as water. She saw her mother, young and beautiful, pregnant with her. She saw 3 women standing in the shadows, whispering, plotting. They were her father's wives, her stepmothers. Jealous. Bitter. Afraid. They hated her mother, for she was the favorite. And so, one night, they went to a dark sorcerer. A man whose eyes burned like red embers, whose voice was as dry as the harmattan wind. They begged him to curse the unborn child. They wanted the baby to be born with a mark of shame. Something that would haunt her forever. And so, the sorcerer gave them a black powder. Rub this on the mother's belly, he said. Every night, until the child is born. The curse will grow with her. And when she becomes a woman, she will bring ruin to any man who tries to claim her. And they did. Every night, while her mother slept unaware, they rubbed the curse powder onto her skin. And when Zanira was born, she carried the mark of their wickedness, the weight of the truth. Zanira gasped as the vision faded. Her heart pounded in her chest, her body trembling. They did this to me, she whispered. Mama Ejoka nodded. Yes. Before you even took your first breath, they cursed you. Zanira felt her hands curl into fists. She remembered their cold smiles when she was a child. She remembered how they whispered behind her back. She remembered how they never truly accepted her. And now, she knew why. They ruined my life, she whispered. The old woman studied her. Then, she spoke the words that would change everything. There is a way to break the curse. Zanira's breath caught. How? Mama Ejoka leaned forward, her voice low and full of warning. You must go back. Zanira stared at her. Back. To the village. Mama Ejoka nodded. The curse cannot be undone unless you confront those who placed it upon you. Zanira felt fear rise in her chest. The village would never accept her again. They would not welcome her back. But then, another thought took root. She had spent her whole life running from a curse she did not deserve. Now, she was done running. She stood up, her hands steady, her heart burning with new strength. Then I will go back. And I will make them pay for what they did to me. The morning sun cast long shadows over the forest as Zanira stepped forward. Her heart was steady. Her mind was clear. For the first time in her life, she knew the truth, and she was no longer afraid. The women who had cursed her, the ones who stole her future, who condemned her before she even took her first breath, were waiting for her in Ijele Village. They thought they had won. They thought she was gone forever. But today, Zanira was returning. And she was bringing the truth with her. The return to Ijele Village. The journey back was long, but Zanira never hesitated. The wind carried the scent of her childhood. The trees whispered secrets she had long forgotten. When she reached the edge of the village, she saw familiar faces. But instead of fear, she felt power. The first villager to see her froze in shock. She's back. A second later, voices rose in alarm. She has returned. The cursed one is here. Why has she come back? People stopped what they were doing, merchants left their stalls, women clutched their children, warriors tightened their grips on their spears. But Zanira walked past them all, her eyes set on one place. The elder's hut. Where her stepmothers, the women who had ruined her life, sat among the respected members of the village. The moment of truth. The elders were gathered in their meeting hut when Zanira pushed open the doors. Gasps filled the room. The chief elder rose from his seat. You are not welcome here, Zanira. She ignored him. Her eyes landed on the 3 women sitting at the back of the hut. Her father's wives. The ones who had gone to the dark sorcerer. The ones who had condemned her before she was even born. She pointed at them. You know why I'm here. The women stiffened. One of them, Mama Ijele forced a laugh. "What madness is this?" she said. "Why have you returned?" Zanira stepped forward, her voice like a blade. "I know the truth." The room fell silent. The stepmothers shifted uncomfortably, exchanging nervous glances. But Zanira was not finished. She turned to the chief elder, her voice loud and unshaken. "These women went to a sorcerer before I was born. They cursed me while I was still in my mother's womb." The elders gasped. The villagers outside leaned closer, listening with wide eyes. The stepmothers shook their heads violently. "Lies!" Mama Ijele hissed. "She speaks madness." But Zanira was prepared. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a small leather pouch, the very one Mama Ijele had given her. She opened it, letting the black powder spill onto her palm. "This is the curse you placed upon me," she said. The elders leaned in closer. Some of them whispered in horror. The powder was old, but its dark magic still clung to the air. One elder, Baba Okon, stepped forward and sniffed the air. His face went pale. This is sorcery," he murmured. "This is dark magic from the Forbidden Lands." The villagers gasped. The truth was out. The stepmothers panicked. Mama Ijele fell to her knees, clutching her chest. "Please," she begged. "We did not mean for this to happen." Mama Nwari, the eldest, clawed at her own face in desperation. "It was jealousy," she cried. "We only wanted her mother to suffer. We did not think the curse would follow the child." Zanira stepped forward, towering over them. Her voice was cold. "You stole my future. You made me a prisoner in my own body." Mama Ijele sobbed. "Forgive us, Zanira. We did not know the curse would be so strong." But the village had had enough. Justice for Zanira. The elders looked at one another. Then, the chief elder stood tall and declared, "These women have brought evil into our land. They have cursed one of our own with their wickedness. They must face the consequences." The villagers erupted in agreement. The warriors stepped forward, grabbing the stepmothers by their arms. "No!" Mama Ijele screamed. "Please!" But there was no mercy left for them. They were cast out of the village, banished forever. And this time, it was Zanira who watched them disappear into the wilderness. For the first time in her life, she was free. "The curse is broken." The chief elder turned to Zanira. "You are welcome in Ijele Village once more." The villagers nodded, their eyes filled with regret and shame. Some whispered apologies. Some avoided her gaze. But Zanira did not stay. This was no longer her home. She had come for justice. And now, she had it. At sunrise, she left the village behind. And this time, she walked toward a future of her own making. Zanira walked away from Ijele Village, her past finally behind her. She did not look back. She did not need to. The curse that had haunted her for years, the darkness placed upon her before she was even born, was gone. The women who had ruined her life were banished, left to wander the world with their own guilt. And for the first time in her life, Zanira was free. The journey to a new life. The sun kissed her skin as she walked through the golden fields beyond the village. The wind whispered softly, no longer carrying the cruel voices of people who feared her. For the first time, she was not running. She was moving forward. She had spent her entire life waiting for love, only to find pain. Now, she no longer waited for love to find her. She would find herself first. Days turned into weeks. She crossed rivers and mountains, slept beneath the stars, and learned the beauty of silence. The world was bigger than she had ever imagined. And out here, she was no longer a cursed woman. She was simply Zanira. The man who saw her differently. One evening, as the sky turned shades of burning orange and deep purple, she arrived in a new village. It was peaceful, untouched by war or greed. And the people did not know her name. She walked through the market, watching the simple joys of life. And that's when she met him. His name was Jabari. He was not a warrior like Adairo. He was not a wealthy merchant like Izomo. He was not a powerful ruler like Obodil. He was just a man. But when he looked at her, he did not see a legend. He did not see a curse. He did not see a mystery to be solved. He saw her. The love that asked for nothing. Jabari did not chase her with gifts. He did not demand her heart. He simply sat beside her by the river, telling her stories of the land, of the stars, of the way the seasons changed. And for the first time, Zanira listened. She did not fear what was to come. She did not feel the weight of the past. She felt safe. And so, love did not arrive in a rush, in a grand display of passion or fire. It arrived softly, like the first drop of rain after a long drought. It arrived patiently, waiting for her to be ready. And when she finally was, she gave herself freely. A wedding unlike the others. This time, there were no drums shaking the sky. There were no elders watching, waiting for something to go wrong. There were no whispers of curses. Zanira wore a simple white cloth, tied softly around her waist. She held Jabari's hands, looking into his eyes. "I love you," he said. And this time, Zanira believed it. She did not fear the night. She did not fear what would happen when she removed her clothes. Because this time, there was no curse to steal her happiness. This time, she was truly free. The night was different this time. No whispers of fear haunted her mind. No shadows of the past clung to her skin. As Zanira lay beside Jabari, she felt something she had never known before: peace. There were no screams. No blindness. No silence. No death. For the first time, love did not come with a price. For the first time, she belonged to no curse, only to herself. The gift of new life. Months passed, and happiness grew. Zanira and Jabari built a home together, not just a house, but a life. She no longer walked with fear in her heart. She laughed without waiting for sorrow to follow. And then, one day, her world changed again. It started as a whisper in the wind, a feeling deep in her soul. Then, it became something undeniable. She was with child. Tears filled her eyes as she rested a hand on her belly. For so long, she had been the girl who lost everything. Now, she was about to become a mother. But she was afraid. Would her child carry the same curse? Would fate steal from her again? Jabari saw the fear in her eyes and held her hands. "You are free now, my love," he whispered. "No harm will come to our child." And she wanted to believe him. The day that changed everything. The morning sky was still dark when the pains began. Zanira cried out, gripping Jabari's hand as the midwives rushed to her side. She had never known pain like this. But she had also never known strength like this. She pushed, she screamed, she fought. And then a cry filled the air. Not one cry. Not two. Not three. 4. Zanira had given birth to 4 children. 2 boys. 2 girls. She held them close, her body shaking with exhaustion, her face wet with tears. She had lost so much. But now, she had gained more than she had ever dreamed. Her heart had been shattered before. Now, it had been made whole again. The legend of Zanira. Back in Ijele Village, the people still spoke of her. Some still feared her. Some still whispered of the girl who had been cursed. The girl who lost everything. The girl who disappeared. But they never understood how she won. Because Zanira was no longer a girl to be pitied. She was a woman who had conquered fate. She was the woman who had survived. And in the end, she did not just break the curse, she became a legend. A legend of strength, of defiance, of victory. Because the girl who was never meant to know love had found it in its purest form. The girl who was never meant to have a future had built one with her own hands. The girl who was cast out had found a new home, a new life, a new beginning. And this time, there were no curses. Only freedom. Only happiness. Only Zanira.